Hey everybody, welcome back. We're back with another episode of The Level. Welcome to The Level, a vodcast series brought to you by VMLY&R. This vodcast creates a space to highlight our POC colleagues and underrepresented groups within the agency. The intention is for us to talk about real topics, real issues, and the action steps we can take to raise awareness, improve the workplace, and the work we do. We want to amplify and level up our colleagues and communities and give actionable steps to our allies. I am so excited to be here with one of my favorite ERGs, don't tell anybody, and one of my favorite people, Jamie Beard, and is representing Spirit. So glad to have you guys here for this amazing level takeover. We haven't had one in a minute, so welcome.
Could not be more excited. We're so thrilled to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, I know, we're a couple episodes into The Level, so I'm sure I'm not ruining the magic, letting people know, we're recording this a little ahead of Native American Heritage Month, which we're in now, and everybody is getting to view this. But just a few days ago, it was Indigenous Peoples Day, and I know that's definitely an important day for Spirit. And, just even like scrolling the news, recently announcing, the first Indigenous woman and going to space. So I know that this topic and this discussion is going to be so important and so impactful for the audience. So I'm going to step out of the way, turn the mic over to you wonderful ladies, and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Nikisha. As Nikisha said, to honor Native American Heritage Month, this episode of The Level is brought to you by Spirit, which is VMLY&R's Native and Indigenous Employee Resource Group. I would love to invite my fellow panelists to join me. And I don't know about y'all, but when I tell people that I'm Native, they usually don't believe me. Or the first question they ask me is, how much Indian blood do you have? And what's interesting is that people just ask that question and don't know why they're asking that question or where it came from. And there is a reason why that is the question that's kind of top of mind for people. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Jamie Beard. I'm a senior communications manager at VMLY&R. And was the chair of Spirit from 2020 to 2021. And I'm really, really excited to have 3 other members of Spirit join me for this special episode of The Level, which we're calling The Path to Tribal Citizenship. So these folks are all at different points in the process of becoming a registered tribal member of Cherokee Nation. And we're going to explore why Native folks have to formally apply for tribal citizenship and then what benefits are associated and so much more. So if I could have you all introduce yourselves, starting with Tasha.
Hi, I am Tasha Cottrell. I am an Associate Connections Director, Paid Media in the Kansas City office, and I am a proud Cherokee woman. Cherokee on my mother's side and Dominican on my father's side, which includes Indigenous as well. So just all the way around, everything. I'm everything. So good to talk to everyone.
And Kat?
Hi, I am Catherine Looney. I'm the receptionist for VMLY&R in their Kansas City office. I'm also a part of the Cherokee Nation on my father's side. It was something that we, I would say, found out about more recently, but we're still very proud and we're happy to be a part of the nation.
And Freddie?
I'm Freddie Wise. I am the Senior Production Manager at VMLY&R. I am a Cherokee and I am registered with the Dawes roll. My grandmother, Pearl Big Feather, was our senior person that was the first on the roll, I believe, or at least she was on the roll at the same time as her mother, Susie Sixkiller. So our family has been on the roll as far as I can remember. And we were actually instrumental in getting my dad to get himself on the roll because we wanted it. So all of us and our children, and really on the Cherokee line, there isn't a place where that stops. My sister has taken advantage of it, her children, her children's children. So if there isn't a place where it says how much blood are you, well, you're not allowed to be that. It's just having your birth certificate and showing your lineage.
So before we do get started, I want to make a note that our participants all do have ancestry from Cherokee Nation, and we are talking specifically about tribal membership in Cherokee Nation. The reason why for that, the Cherokee Nation was, until recently, considered the biggest federally recognized tribe in the U.S. We just have a lot of people that are part of our tribe. We were passed by the Navajo Nation in the 2020 U.S. Census. And in the United States today, there are over 500 federally recognized tribes, and then many more Native people who are not part of a federally recognized tribe. There are so many ways to tribal citizenship, and let's go ahead and get into it. So Kat, as someone who recently completed the process of becoming a registered member, can you tell us a little bit why Indigenous and Native people have to apply for tribal citizenship?
I would say if we do not continue to apply for tribal citizenship, it is a culture that could be forgotten. And in many times has already in history been forgotten, but it keeps things going. It's very important to keep that membership, that community, the culture and education going. I think it's important.
Totally. I agree. Absolutely agree. And Freddie, as someone who has been registered for quite some time and whose family has the history that your family has, can you tell us a little bit more about what benefits are associated with being a registered member of your nation?
I don't know that we've ever taken real advantage, so I don't know if I really know what all the advantages are, but one of the biggest for someone like me at this time is the health care, because I can get free health care and I have gone down to the Haskell Indian Center in Lawrence, Kansas, and I thought that was a good opportunity. COVID gave me a good opportunity to get that started. So I went there to get my shots, and I didn't realize it, but they also then get funded from the government if I go there to get my shots versus getting it at my doctor's office, even though it's covered by my insurance. But I felt it was a good time to do that because at some point that healthcare is going to be really important to me and to my family and my siblings, my sisters and my brother. My brother and my sister are both self-employed. One sells real estate and one does something else, but that's really important to them because as small business owners, that healthcare is everything. But also, if you're registered, your children could go to Haskell College for free. It would be funded. And also even just getting grants to go to other colleges. I know my niece did that, and so it was, extremely helpful.
That's amazing. Yeah, and there are so many Native colleges and universities across the United States that provide that amazing, benefit to members all across the U.S. Was there anyone else who wanted to chime in on that question?
I just wanted to say I'm glad Freddie brought that up because that was one of my reasons. I have an 18-year-old freshman, so it was definitely something that was brought up, just the grants, the opportunities. Even if you don't go to a Native American or Indigenous university or college, you can still, like Freddie said, get grants. There's money just sitting there for Native members, so very important.
That's how I went to college. I would not have gone where I did otherwise. Yep. Yeah. And I'm not, I think I haven't yet mentioned this, but I am Choctaw on my father's side and Cherokee on my mother's side, and I am not yet a registered member, which we'll get into a little bit later. So Kat and Tasha both have very recently gone through the process of becoming a member or are still going through it. I would love to hear more from you both about what the process is actually like. I think there is a lot of, for me at least, like mystery around it. And as someone who is wanting to do it, I'm kind of nervous. So I was anxious to have this conversation because you are really going to bring a lot of relief to me. I think it seems a little bit scarier to me than it probably is. But what is that process like of becoming a registered member?
I would just say it was a tough process for us. We were kind of piggybacking off of the help from my dad's cousin who lives in Tulsa still. And he already had our DAWS roll number for our great-grandmother and everything. It was just a matter of getting us registered. And us as a family, there's 6 of us. Well, our mom's not Native, but she helped a lot. And we were just trying to scramble for records, and we had to send them, and nothing was done electronically. So it had to be mailed, and then it had to be approved and then sent back. And my birth certificate got lost in the process. It eventually returned, but it went to a wrong, they sent it back to the wrong recipient somewhere in another state, and they luckily gave it back to me. It was just tough, and it took a long time, and I was really anxious throughout the whole process because I just thought we'd be rejected eventually, and I was actually ready to give up at one point. And it was, I think, a total maybe 6 or 8 months total, but it was a lot of paperwork, but we got it done. We were determined.
I will say everything that Kat's saying is exactly mirroring our experience. Again, we had a family member that already did the work. We had actually DAWS rolls going back to our great-great-great-grandfather, but everyone's DAWS roll numbers, the research. I'm kind of lucky because both my brothers were in the police and they're detectives. They were detectives.
I was going to say.
Yeah, so they used their detective background.
Can I hire him?
Yeah, so I'm trying to tell you, it was perfect because there was a lot of back and forth. So just like Kat said, nothing's electronic, so a lot of paperwork. And we were doing it for my mother, and then there's 4 of us, our siblings. So it was just a huge packet, but a lot of back and forth, a lot of copies, a lot of, we still need this, we need this affidavit, we need this DAWS roll number, we need these death certificates, we need these birth certificates, and it's just a lot. And you got to remember too that they don't have a huge staff, so, and they're getting a lot of forms in all the time, so they're backed up. So there were things that we were sending, and I mean, I was calling every day, and the same thing. My brother got super discouraged. My mom was ready to give up, and I'm like, no, guys, we just, I think they know me now. It's like, hey, that's that Tasha again. She's calling again. And I'm like, hey, did you get this? And my mom sent this, and and then my mom's like, my birth certificate's not right. It has to be. I mean, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of things that you need. So it's not easy. And right now my mom literally has to send one more affidavit, and I'm just like, Mom, let me help you. We're going to get through this. But the cool thing about it is there are historians that will help you if you do need some help. But the most rewarding thing for me is just uncovering the history of my ancestors and seeing that, the land and the cabins that we have down there, and there's our names are on certain buildings down there. And Freddie, I got tingles when you started naming your ancestors and finding out that one of my ancestors was Ice Pick Killer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. New tattoo, let's go. I mean, just finding out the family and the faces and seeing the faces, and which I'll share, I'll get that to you so we can share some of that. But I mean, I even found the oral history of one of my ancestors actually registering, and he was talking. They were like, state your name, what tribe are you from, and reading that and seeing that, it's just, I don't know, this whole process just makes you feel like your ancestors are all around you. You feel it, and it's super spiritual. It's deep. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Tasha, your great grandchildren are going to be watching us on this in a million years, and they're going to be like, wow, the technology was so bad.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm telling you.
We're
Hey,
doing
don't
the
age me
same
yet.
thing you're doing right now.
I'm gonna be around for a while. We got some time.
Oh my God, I love that. So I guess my next question, so it sounds like, you all have had to apply on your own, and I'm curious what it looks like for your children to apply. I think, Freddie, you have done that really recently, haven't you?
Yeah, when we did it, like for my siblings and I, and like I said, my dad hadn't even registered, so we literally all did it together and just sent it all in. And even with all the paperwork, and we had everything, and we already had my grandmother. My grandmother was still alive at the time, in fact, and so we had her number and all her papers, and it still took a while. I mean, it's not a fast process. If you've got everything, it seems very seamless. I recall it being like anywhere from like 8 weeks to 3 or 4 months or something. They're just not very fast at it. And you do have to send all of your real papers in and cross your fingers that you get them all back. But it's not a real fast thing, no matter if everything is perfect.
Wow, that is so interesting to me. I really am excited to get started, but I do have a feeling that things might be a little slow.
Yeah, it's just slow, but there's like really nothing to be nervous about.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I do feel like we have been saying a few terms that are very familiar to us as a community, and maybe they're not as familiar to the folks watching. So there are different requirements associated with applying for tribal membership depending on what nation you are trying to gain membership from. And a couple of common ones are tribal blood quantum, tribal residency, continued contact with the tribe, or lineal descendancy, which is what we've been talking about. Tasha, can you kind of explain, like really give light to lineal descendancy and what the Dawes role is?
Yes. And
it's a big question.
To my nerdom, because I am about history. But yeah, so the word we've all been saying when it comes to Cherokee Nation is the Dawes role. Going back in history, even way before the Trail of Tears, when our tribes were not in Oklahoma and in that area, because we were forced to walk and take that land, the government, we made an agreement with the government, and it wasn't something that we wanted to do, right? It was a forced agreement where every Native member had to sign this roll, this Dawes roll. You had to register to be federally recognized, right? And it's basically taking your land to promise a little piece of it back to you. But it was just working with the government. And that's why you have a lot of tribes that are not federally recognized, because there's a lot of those tribes that refuse to sign this agreement, this treaty, and they were not federally recognized. And I mean, they kind of like just went into the shadows. There were a lot of rebellions, a lot of fights. We won't get too much into that, but Cherokee Nation is one of the tribes that did sign this treaty, and all of the members were forced to sign the Dawes roll. But again, going back from history and going back to what Kat just said, it was something we were forced to do. Yes, moved us to the reservations, moved our families, took our land. We know that. But at this point, though, it's us getting our Dawes roll number is something for us. It means something for us. It's something for our spirits. You know what I mean? To kind of to soothe us, to link up with our family, to link up with our community, to fully like wear our history on us. So something that was such a heavy thing before is still something that's very important for us to have to this day.
I was going to say that Dawes roll, it to now, it's a really cool, nice thing to still have it, because it does bring all of us right here together. And all of our families and that, but it really was kind of like that little just something that we got because they took all the land, and the Dawes roll really was so that they knew exactly who you were, where you were, and what they did with you. And the little bit of land that we got for getting this Dawes roll, Cherokees were just one of what they were, the 5 civilized tribes, and civilized by that meant that we were the ones that allowed them to take our land and sign some papers. And but Dawes is the residual is good for us today, just so that we can see each other and learn about each other and feel connected. But then it wasn't, I think, what I'm learning about it more and more, just really since we've had this. I've reached out and learned so much more that there's both disappointing and exciting. So, but that was one of them. It's didn't start out to be a good thing for us.
And piggybacking on what Tasha said, like there were tribes that refused it and in turn were forgotten. And that was the trade-off of not making themselves visible by federal standards and became almost extinct outside of word of mouth and maybe documentarians or historians that did have record of them. But federally, like Freddie said, it's one of those things. It's good, it's bad, but as far as now, it gives us a sense of our being, of our membership, of community. We know who we are. So
Belonging.
Yeah, there it is. Belonging to a community.
It's like going back to those other tribes that aren't recognized. It doesn't mean that you're not Native because you can't prove it.
Back.
You are who you are, and you know who you are. You don't have to. It's just that our community is in such a. It's not like, and I heard this gentleman say today when I was actually talking about this. He was like, I don't have to find a number to prove that I'm Italian or German. I don't have. If I'm telling you that my family's from Russia, I'm from Russia. Like, we have to literally prove who we are and get a number. You know what I mean? So, but the tribes that went into the shadows, no, they still have their culture and their memories and that's why it's so important. And I love what Kat was saying and what Freddie was saying about preserving that, the oral traditions. And another benefit that we didn't even talk about is the fact that we as a community can go back to the reservation and be a part of the dances and be a part of the oral history and the language, learn the language. So things that, that are important to carry it on, because I want my children to learn it. I want my boys to know. And that's so important to our people,
Absolutely. And I think the fact that we have to register for tribal membership is a way to kind of gatekeep our community in a sense, like, because I don't think people realize, Native people, we really struggle with this perception of having lived in the past. And here, there are three beautiful Native women looking at me right now, that are fully in the present here. But had colonialism not affected our country, I don't think people remember how big our communities would be. So many people, so many Native and Indigenous people have died from assimilation, from the residential school programs, and so many more from wars to take the land by colonial, by the colonizers. I think it really is forgotten. Our people are forgotten regularly, which is terrible, and that's why we're here having the conversation today. But I do think it's people don't realize how big we would be had all of this not happened. We would be a massive amount of people. And it's, amazing that we are all here today despite what has happened to us as a people.
And we were a massive amount of people to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is one topic I do want to talk about. It's not necessarily switching gears, but I do want to talk about blood quantum. So back to that, like when I tell people I'm Native and they're like, how Native are you? So that's what blood quantum is. It's essentially like, think about this question with me, like, have you ever had to quantify your identity? And that's what we have to do to gain, some nations require a blood quantum to gain membership. But I do want to talk a little bit about where it came from. And there are a few other nuances that have affected our community here today. But I learned recently that blood quantum comes from English common law. So whole blood or half blood designations were essentially like introduced to resolve inheritance disputes. And then for mixed race people, it determined what political rights they had. And we have definitely seen that in America as well. So property, who would receive it and how, is how blood quantum was introduced to Native communities. So the federal government used blood quantum and then the roles, the Dawes rolls, to determine which individuals were Indian enough to receive allotments of land. So just let me do my quick little history lesson there. But it is so interesting to me. I don't like that question, the how Native are you? Because I don't think it matters who in my family was the last full-blooded person, because I feel that community and that spirit of a people in my life every day. But I am curious from you all, like, how do you feel if you've ever, like, I'm assuming you've been asked that question, and if you have, like, what does it make you feel like?
All been through something like that, and for me, and you guys know, we'll have a mini series. I think we're planning mini series about this. But first of all, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. It's how you feel and what you know and what your spirit resonates with. And I don't know. I don't know if this is, sometimes I feel like it's an American thing, or I don't know what it is, but it's just this thing where you have to prove yourself. What are you? You don't look like this, or you look like this, or you got this type of hair, or your skin is this, or you're too light, or you're too dark. It's just like, we all come from something, and why can't we just celebrate it and let it be what it is? And nothing looks like what you think. Those are all stereotypes. And I know, Jamie, we brought this up before. It's like when you know, and I think it's a lot about representation and what media forces in people's faces all the time. But normally, if you do see a Native American person, it's Lakota. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of that representation. But, you know, it's very rarely some of these other tribes. So that's what they think. But listen, I'm here to tell you, we are who we are, and we love it, and we look like what we look like. You know what I mean? So, and that's it. Our spirits are aligned. Our souls are brothers and sisters. So that's it. I'll get off my soapbox because it irritates me. It really does.
I kind of feel like with a lot of things that people say things to you and they don't know how it really comes across, how it makes you feel. They're not saying it to make you feel defensive or bad, but it does kind of put you on the spot, and you do feel a little defensive about it, and you really don't even want to answer it because you don't know if it's enough. If your answer is going to make you feel less than, or exactly why are they asking, and what difference does it make? So it always a little bit puts you on the spot and makes you feel defensive about what your answer is going to be. But I don't think people always do it for that reason. They just don't. It's just something to ask.
I feel like people just word vomit that question. Truly. Yeah. I feel like it just like comes out and they like don't even know where it came from or why. Yeah. But I want to also pivot a little bit. So I do think that the blood quantum is a tool of white supremacy. And it's used in a few ways, at least it has been in the history of America. So for Native people, it was used as a way to determine if you were Indian enough to receive property. But I do also want to talk about the one drop of blood rule, and recognize how that has impacted our, brothers and sisters who are Black, or maybe who are mixed race, Black and Native. And I know, Tasha, you and I have talked about this a little bit before. So I'd love to hear, you explain what the one drop of blood rule is, and how, it's impacted tribal membership, because it's had a very recent impact on tribal membership.
Yes. So
I want you to be a history professor again. So
Oh no,
Here you
let's
go.
go. Let's go. You guys ready? Where's my chalkboard? Let's go. So going back to this, and there's very, very recent wins, Jamie, you are correct. And it basically comes from the freedmen, okay? There were freedmen that were slaves that either sought refuge with tribes, that married into tribes, and then we're having full honesty, full disclosure there were some tribes that had slaves. Okay, so let's be honest. This is history. This happened. So when they walked that walk with us, and now you got to think they're blacks and indigenous and natives at the time, they were all natives. And when I say this, I mean because there were already indigenous, dark-skinned natives that were here in America. But when I say this, I'm specifically speaking of Africans that were brought to America for the purposes of slavery. So when that mixing happened, they became part of the family. They became part of the community and part of the culture. So their offspring, children, it's like, hey, we are part of this too. We have a percentage in this too. We have stake in this too. We have community in this too. And they have been granted citizenship. So, I mean, you can look in recent court where unfortunately they had to take it to the courts because there were some tribal members that weren't okay with it. To say that nicely, not nicely, they weren't okay with it, and then they have some fight back, but they won their rights because that's their background and that's the truth of what happened. So yes, we have our freedmen that are Cherokee members, part of Cherokee Nation, and they have full rights, just as Cherokee members. So
I just read that this morning, as a matter of fact.
I hope that makes sense the way I've said it. And if you guys want history professor Tasha, Tasha.Control at VMLY&R.com. Bring me the questions. Let's go. Let's go.
We need to do like a mini series of Tasha being a history professor. And then when she becomes one, someone give her, what is it called when you're a professor? When you have like tenure. Someone give this woman tenure. One question I have, and I know the answer to this, but I also think, that some people might be wondering, are tribal citizens also citizens of the United States? It's like a trivia question. And the answer is yes. So in 1924, the federal government recognized American Indians as citizens, making tribal citizens simultaneously citizens of their tribe and the U.S. And speaking of, I say that word, Indians, and I guess I'm curious, like, how y'all feel about that word, because I do not like it. I don't like the word Indians, and I don't know if that is just a me thing. And are we comfortable talking about this right now?
I think I've grown up with it for so many years that was the only term. Really, people didn't even say Native American, they didn't say Indigenous. So it doesn't bother me so much. But now, when we're really talking about where the word Indian came from, because they kind of came to the wrong continent, and then you go, oh, well, that really doesn't apply to us at all. So you just switch. But it hasn't bothered me my whole life, just because that was really the only term I ever heard. But now I like to use something different.
Yeah. What about you, Kat? How do you feel about that word? Indian.
Well, growing up, our grandma, which our native heritage side is from and everything, grandma and grandpa over there, they would say, you're Indian, we just haven't gotten your paperwork done. And I was kind of confused as a kid, but of course, growing up, I was like, okay, I will go by Native American because like Freddie said, I was like, that's not me. That's folks overseas. I guess Native American works for me, but our grandma, just because she was called that and grandpa were called that, that's what they answered to and that's what they taught. But as soon as I learned what the PC version was supposed to be, I was like, okay, no, I want that one. So I started going by that from then on. But once we were all registered and everything, it was Native American on everything. Like wasn't just Indian. We were Native American or Indian heritage or something, but we weren't just calling ourselves that. No.
I personally really like the movement of us getting away from using that word, and I wonder if I have such a strong feeling toward it because I have never been called anything but Cherokee and Choctaw. Like since I could talk, my parents, told me like, you are Cherokee, you are Choctaw, and I have never been called an Indian except by someone who is being inappropriate toward me. So maybe that's where my strong feeling comes from, but it's kind of interesting hearing your perspective on it. And maybe the movement that's happening, today with us using different words. How do you get started if you're interested in becoming a member of your tribe? Any advice for people? Me? What should I do first?
Well, I think if you've already started doing your family research and then just documenting ancestry, from then I would go to, in your case, Cherokee or Choctaw tribe and find out what their criteria is for their memberships. And then I will go from there. If you know even someone, there might have been a rumor that a great uncle whoever was in a tribe and you think it might be true or it is and you want to become a member, I say just start there. Go and find any respective tribe depending on where you're located or who you are, and start there because they will have resources. There will be help. You will have to come up with a lot of paperwork, which we were talking about earlier. But I would definitely start there and reach out to them because they'll let you know exactly what you need in order to find or start your hunt or your journey. And it'll be a little bit of a journey, but definitely start with your designated tribal, membership office. Start there. For us, it's in Tulsa.
I was just going to say the ancestry.com, the places that you send your DNA into. I didn't do it, but all my sisters and my brother did. And they get and they did it like maybe 3 years ago, and they still get people who reach out to them when they get their DNA stuff back, and it connects them. And we've found people, and we have a huge family on both sides, my mom and my dad. And so we know a lot of people. My mom and dad were both one of 10. My dad's mom had 10 boys, so we always would laugh and say 10 little Indian boys because she had 10 boys, and so that was quite a thing for her. But anyway, my sisters and my brother have had people reach out to them because their DNA is matching up. So that probably is one good place to start.
Definitely piggybacking on with both Freddie and Kat saying, but definitely for me, this was a family lift because we've all had certain parts of our family that always wanted this, always wanted to achieve this, but had some missing pieces. So once we started like collaborating with family members, like literally my brother like went to Atlanta to see my great Aunt Liz, and Aunt Liz had these death records, and then she had these birth records, and she didn't know that she had Dawes roll numbers. She's like, oh, that's what that number is, So connecting with family to get all the pieces, and like Kat said, finding out what it is that your tribal office, membership office wants from you, and to speed up the process. It's never going to be fast, but to speed it up and to avoid them sending things back to you, try to have all of that up front and send in a complete packet. That helps so much. Everything that you need, try to do it up front so that can avoid some of that back and forth. Definitely.
You guys want to hear something interesting? So Cherokee Nation allows you to be a dual member. So if you have another tribal membership, they totally allow that. Choctaw doesn't. So when I start my process, I'll have to choose. And it's like, I never feel paralyzed by decisions except for this one. Like I have no idea how I'll choose. anyway, another important thing to look into if you are a multi-tribe citizen. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know we have barely touched the surface on the topic of tribal citizenship, but for everyone listening, we hope you just learned something today, and take that into this season. And thanks again for joining us for the Level Vodcast. It's an amazing show that showcases the reality of BIPOC issues through authenticity, comedy, positive dialogue. And we're just so thrilled that you made it here with us. So thank you again for joining us. And everyone on the panel, appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is amazing. Thank you, guys.